Hello, my name is Garth Clarkson, and welcome to number 3 in my series on how to transform a nation for God, how to heal a land. We started with the scripture in Chronicles that says, "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will turn and I will heal their land." It sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? Now, last time we established that it's not just anybody who is responsible for healing nations and for the Great Commission. It is actually the Christians who are responsible for enacting change in our societies and bringing healing at a national level. And we established also that it may be political, but it's not the onus of political parties or political leaders to enact this change. Because quite often these days, they are just simply reflecting popular opinion, and so whatever's popular is what they'll go with, because they want to get voted in again next time. But this time, we're talking about the actual steps that the Christians, that was step 1, the actual steps that the Christians need to take in order to heal the land. If they will humble themselves is the first step. Now, we see a lot in churches. I've talked a lot about popular psychology and feel-good mentality and political correctness, and a lot of people who think I'm totally against feeling good about yourself and all those sort of things because of what I'd say in those other messages. But that's not true. For many years, I was one of the pioneers of preaching positive affirmations, positive self-talk, mirror talk, and a lot of these motivational little techniques, and to help, and I was always speaking positivity in building people's lives up. The thing is, the whole society's become so centered towards that they expect to be spoken to nicely. They expect that nobody's going to criticize them, and that they are totally free to do whatever they like, and they're okay by God and man, and it's all sweet in the world. And that's complete and utter rubbish. And that's why I've swung away, is to bring an adjustment back into the church to say, hey, let's not forget the basis for why we should be feeling good. We don't leave God out of the picture and then just take the residual psychology. There's a lot of good in psychology, and a lot of it has come from faith. And they don't like to recognize that, but a lot of these things that are now popular in psychology, I was preaching 30 years ago, but no one was listening. But now it's the proper psychology. But they just have to spend a few years getting God out of the equation so that it can be respected in the academic world. So let's get God back into the equation, because we're talking about healing a land. So, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. Now, there's a popular concept in the church today that humility is not thinking lowly and, oh, I'm a worm and no man and all that sort of stuff, but that it's having a correct opinion of yourself. And in theory, I agree with that. But the problem is there's just so many scriptures that tell you not to exalt yourself and not to think of yourself more highly than you ought. Like in Romans, where it says, "Let no man think more highly of himself than he should, but soberly." And so we are told that humility is an attitude. It's the opposite to pride. Now, what is pride? Pride is thinking more highly of yourself than you should. Now, talking to a lot of the people lately in the church, you would think that pride is the new humility. It's rubbish. No. If we look clearly at the traditional gospel, which we're supposed to be preaching, it says that firstly, we are sinners. And in Romans, that they quote so often to espouse all this grace without balance thing, is that the law was there to teach us that we cannot do it ourselves, that we cannot be righteous in ourselves, and that we are fallen human beings. Basically, we're scumbags, and we have no value on this planet except what God gives us. And it's as simple as that. And so, if we're a potential believer, we have a right to be here, as long as we stay open. And if we're a believer, we've got a right to be here. But people who've made a decision and will not be talked out of it, they're a waste of space. Who cares? Anyhow, they're not going to have any effect in changing our society and the world for good or for the better, no matter how noble their ideals are. Anyhow, back on track. If my people who will humble themselves and pray. So humble yourself. So humility is getting a correct impression of yourself and having a balanced attitude that is correct from the perspective of who you are, where your place is in life, what authority you have, where you sit with other people in terms of all of those things. And there's another series I'm doing which goes into relationships, and there's another series which goes into the tools and techniques I use for active, deliberate self-concept modification, where you can brainwash yourself. You can take whatever attributes you are lacking mentally or psychologically or in terms of character or personality. You can take those things and you can change them using these techniques. So I'm going to go into that with another series, but for now, getting a good idea of who you are in the scheme of things is the first step towards humility. Humility is realizing in me I am nothing, but in Him I am something more than I could imagine. And that's where people who take the I'm something awesome, but taking God out of it, that is arrogant. It's proud. It's just so over the top, insane, it's not worth mentioning. So we put God back into the equation, and with God all things are possible, Jesus said. He said with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. So we get God back into the equation, and then all things become possible. You want God's results, you don't do it man's way. So we've got to start bringing God's way back into the church if we want the miraculous to start happening. And let's face it, looking at the world around us, we need the miraculous if we're going to effect a change that's going to heal our land.